capital city Georgetown. Political, legislative, economics, and current affairs. The People's National Congress Reform (PNCR) presents Nation Watch.
Good day, Guyana. It's Friday, the 16th day of January 2015, and of course, since this is my first time speaking to the public for the year, I must say a very happy new year to you, and I wish you a blessed and successful one. Of course, welcome to Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Unfortunately, the opposition leader, Brigadier the Honorable David Granger, is not on the program today. He's currently on assignment, actually, dealing with other political business in the community, the Rupununi community. Of course, as you know, APNU continues to do a whole lot of work when it comes to sensitizing our Guyanese citizens regarding the need for them to stay focused, especially at this time when we have a general election, talks of general elections in the air. Now, on today's program, the issue is once again the lack of democracy of President Donald Ramotar's presidency. As you know, Guyanese are not the only ones who have come out and criticized not only Mr. Ramotar, but the PPP government as a whole. We also have the international community criticizing certain moves by the PPPC administration that, of course, we are dubbing dictatorship. With me on the panel to discuss this with you today, he's no stranger to you, a man who wears many, many hats. Of course, he's chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, deputy speaker for the National Assembly. He's also an attorney at law, and he also functions as the shadow minister for labor and other related matters. Mr. Bassel Williams, welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Malika. Good day, viewers.
All right.
It's nice to be here.
All right. It's always great to have you. I know you're used to a feature. Unfortunately, there's no feature for you today. But as I said, APNU continues to do its work across the country. Just for you to get an idea of today's topic, I'll just read the first paragraph or so, the first few sentences of a release that a Partnership for National Unity would have sent out today. A Partnership for National Unity, APNU, supports international criticism of the People's Progressive Party civic PPPC administration over its damage to parliamentary and local democracy in Guyana. President Donald Ramotar has failed to conduct local government elections and failed to recall the National Assembly after he prorogued the parliament on the 10th of November 2014. Of course, we're now in 2015, January 2015, and Mr. Bassel Williams, even before you make your own statement, I want to start off by asking you about one of the promises Mr. Ramotar made. He said that in January, and most of us would have expected to hear it in his New Year's presentation to the nation, that in early January, he would call a date for general elections, which again he promised that it would be in 2015. How has this affected the current situation whereby we have the fact that the parliament is still prorogued? Well,
it's not unexpected. It's not the first time the president said that he would name a date. And on the New Year's message, he failed to name a date. And so we have the situation where certainly he's limited for 6 months by the prorogation, and he'll have to decide when he wants, when he would call this date. But we expected that. We know he's under tremendous pressure because it was a move which was miscalculated, really, because to shut down the parliament, which is a core arm of the state, where the people's representatives participate and bring the people's problems to the fore, it's not something that is normal. In fact, it's unprecedented in this region. And I'm other than Canada, I'm not sure that I've heard of prorogation in any other country of the Commonwealth. And so it's not something normal. And when in fact, it collides with core principles in the Commonwealth Charter, and you know, Guyana is a member of the Commonwealth. And so the president obviously has problems internally, and whatever it is, the Guyanese people need to have their elections. And I know he's probably worried about the resumption of Parliament. We have said the first business is a no confidence motion, which he tried to head off by proroguing the Parliament, which we consider that he didn't really look at the Constitution holistically. When you understand the fact that Ghana is a democratic state with separation of powers under the Constitution, which is supreme, he miscalculated. And for example, proroguing the Parliament collides with Article 13 of the Constitution, which provides an inclusionary democracy. Instead of being inclusive, he became exclusive in the sense that he set up a situation where the ruling party is ruling the country alone during this period, because Parliament would not be able to exercise its oversight function and scrutiny of government activities and certainly government expenditure. And therefore, we're not surprised that the UK Foreign Minister and the High Commissioner have come out. And let me say that the ABC countries, ABCE countries, the ambassadors and high commissioners, have been consistent in Ghana in calling for both local government elections and now general elections. They've been consistent.
Before we go further into this issue of the fact that the international community has criticized the president's move, and they're calling for the prorogation to end, you did talk about the Constitution where the proroguing of Parliament is concerned. Now, recently, as the Foreign Affairs Minister, Ms. Caroline Rodriguez-Burkett, she talked, in terms of responding to the High Commission and the British High Commission, she talked about the fact that her president, quote unquote, did not do anything illegal. Do you get the sense that there are people in the public who still are not quite clear on whether the move by Mr. Ramotar was illegal or whether it was legal, and why it may be a clash in terms of the Constitution?
But it's not just a question of legal, it's a question of principle. Legal in the sense, we don't want to go into any deep discussion on the legality of it, but I'm saying that the way constitutions are construed, one article has to be read with another article. It's the architecture of the Constitution. If you had to construe a particular article, you have to do so by relevance, by looking at other articles in the Constitution. That wasn't done. If the president had actually been advised properly and looked holistically at the Constitution, he would not have opted to employ Article 71 and prorogue the Parliament, because that collides with so many other provisions within our Constitution. And so that's why we're saying, he is saying it is legal because he's relying on it, but in truth and in fact, he ought to have done more. And if he had looked holistically at all the relevant provisions in our Constitution, he would not have gone that route. But having done so, we're seeing that it collides with certain international mores and values and norms. For example, the Commonwealth Charter, the OAS Charter also. That's why you would remember the Secretary General of the OAS came out very early and commented on this matter, because there's a provision in the OAS Charter on democracy and which outlaws any government coming to power except by the ballot. So he had to come out. And now we have the British coming out, the United States. But what I'm saying to you, they have always been consistent. And the government's obviously, the reaction, as you've seen with the American ambassador, the feral blast. You see what's happening now in this response by the High Commission. But the fact of the matter is, you can't want to remain a member of the nations of democratic countries and then behave undemocratically. What we have right now in Ghana since the prorogation on the 10th of November is one-party rule.
One might argue with you, though, if I'm to look at it from maybe a PPP propaganda side, one might argue with you that it is the right of any government to protect and defend their own operations, whether it's benefiting the country or not.
But it can't be that, because the government is not dear in itself. The government is not an entity entire in itself. The government is representative of the people in the country. And even though a section of the people would have voted or put that government in there, once the government is in there, it ought to be the government of all the people in the country. So it's not just a question of protecting the interests. The overarching principle should be that the government must make decisions in the interests of all the people of the country and of the country itself.
Okay. If I can...
This is not in the interest of Guyana, because the British High Commission has indicated that there are a lot of loans that we are enjoying from the United Kingdom, but there are other loans in the pipeline. And this state of affairs could prejudice those loans coming out. And so businesses also that they have here, that the Guyanese people are benefiting from, could be affected too. Plus they could be suspended. So why would the government want to put the Guyanese people in jeopardy of being isolated?
Why do you believe that the government seems to be afraid or to accept that, look, we have made a mistake? Because you said it yourself earlier, this is not the first time the international community has come out and spoken against something that the PPPC government has done. And this is not the first time that the PPPC has said, well, this is our way, this is our business. It even happened regarding the trafficking in persons report. Why do you believe that they can't seem to say, look, we are going to make efforts to change whatever situation?
Because their strategy is to, in plain defense, is to go on offense and try not to let the nation feel that they accept what these international bodies are saying. And so they attack what they're saying and try to ridicule them in many regards. I mean, it's nadir where at the U.S. ambassador's own function, the minister lambasted him at his own function because he called for local government elections. And as I said, they have been very consistent in this regard. You can't be accepting loans and monies from these countries and then you're saying at the same time that they ought not to call on you to comply with democratic norms, because you signed on. You signed on to the Charter. You signed on to the United Nations Charter. You signed on to the OAS Charter. And once you want to exist amongst the nations of this world, you have to abide. That's why he gave you Fiji. Fiji, they were suspended and they put themselves in order and they're back in. Zimbabwe has been suspended too. So we have to decide if we want to be a pariah nation.
So are you saying that there can be serious sanctions imposed on Guyana, and I'm talking about aside from these various countries cutting off funding, can there be more serious sanctions if the situation is not fixed soon?
Well, from the viewpoint of the Commonwealth, the High Commissioner said it clearly, they could be suspended. And there are other sanctions in terms of withholding of loans and the like. So the government knows that there are certain consequences. The fact of the matter is that the government is mortally afraid to hold elections at this time.
Why?
Because they will lose. The Guyanese people are even more enlightened now. And they will lose. And they know that. And don't forget, they have their own surveys being done on opinion polls, and they're not getting anything from those opinion polls and surveys. Otherwise, they would have gone to elections. Look how many times this president has been expected to name a date for elections and failed to do so.
If I'm to just look at it from another angle, your party, both party and the partnership, have been continually criticized for not necessarily getting the support of all of Guyana, especially where this issue of a prorogued parliament is concerned, the fight for democracy, the fight for local government elections, and currently the fight for a date to have general elections held. Your party has been accused of not involving the young people enough, or I should say not being able to meet the young people enough. As the chairman of the PNC, I know you've been doing, continued outreaches. What response, or I should say responses, are you getting from the young people? Do you get the sense that they understand exactly what is happening?
Well, I do believe they do. I do believe they do. But you must remember, that in these circumstances, what people expect, some people are pushing that we ought to be doing certain activities like going on the road and demonstrating and the like.
Mm-hmm.
And we know from experience that that's what the government wants us to do. We know the PPP wants us to go on the road so that they could send in their urgent provocateurs, beat up Indo Guyanese, burn their houses down, and the like. And the problem they have is that they have been unable to create such a situation or reaction from us. And so the card that they have played over the years, where when you have those things, they take pictures of them and show them in the communities they think that they have, and tell the people, you see how these people behave, these are the people you're going to... They don't have that card to play. And so they're in mortal trouble, and they will not be returned by the people of Guyana in the light of the manner in which they have governed this country. And, they keep talking, the record show, other than Haiti, we're the second poorest country in this region. Highest unemployment after Haiti again. So what are they talking about? We have the lowest per capita income. All those little islands, the per capita income is higher than in Guyana. So what the fact of the matter is, if there's any development in Guyana, it is limited of a small cabal. That is the fact of the matter. But the general population of this country, the ordinary people of this country, from Crabrook Creek right down to Paipang in the Rupununi, they're poor. They're poor, and the youths in particular, they have no opportunities. What do they look for? Crime stalks this land, and crime is rampant in all its forms. So I don't know if you could point to any single feature that you could say, yes, this is something favorable for the government in terms of its governance. You have a few people, you'll see some monstrosities going up in the air and all those things. Does not no ordinary person. And I heard Ms. Teixeira talking about some new middle class and all of that. But, the workers are trampled upon. The co-workers in the public service, our public, they're in disarray and they're marginalized. They don't have a living wage, and people generally are suffering. Let's face it. If it weren't for barrels coming in from abroad and assistance from abroad, I don't know where the majority of the people in this country would be. But people are suffering, Malika.
Viewers,
and they need a change.
Viewers,
need a change of problem.
If you're now tuning in, of course, this is Facing the Nation. Today we are discussing the fact that Guyanese are not the only ones criticizing the lack of democracy in the operations of Donald Ramotar and, of course, the People's Progressive Party. The Civic, of course, with me is Mr. Bassel Williams, Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, and, of course, APNU Member of Parliament. Now, today we'll open up the phone lines a little earlier, so we'll definitely be taking your calls. In preparation, we only have one number working today, of course, that is 225-0008. That's the only number you can get through on. I'm sorry, it's going to be a little more difficult than usual. 225-0008. I'll repeat the number when we are ready to open up the phone lines. MP Williams, the last time you and I met, the president had just prorogued the parliament. And I had asked you then about whether you believe that this is a situation, this entire situation, aside from the fact that you're only allowed to prorogue the parliament for 6 months. I asked you then if you believe that Mr. Ramotar can delay this process in whatever way or shape until 2016, because general elections are really and truly constitutionally due in 2016. I have to ask you again. I mean, this is, some people may argue with me and say, well, this is only January. The year has just begun. But are you even suspicious or concerned that he can probably delay, we can see more delay tactics until 2016?
Well, President Ramotar could only do what he's allowed to do. Obviously, under the Constitution, the same provision that he used to prorogue, he would feel that he could do that again. But he has indicated on more than one occasion to the Guyanese people, that they would not prorogue a second time. I'm sure you would have heard that. The Guyanese people heard that. They're out there. He has to know what he thinks of the Guyanese people. If he feels he could tell him any old thing when he feels like, and then does the contrary, it's a matter for him. At the end of the day, he has to face the polls. And that's where the people are waiting for him.
Do you believe that, and this is no offense to you viewers, it really is a genuine concern. Do you believe Guyanese, and I mean collectively, I don't mean 5 or 10 persons, are ready to really and truly see the back of the PPP? Because I'm asking, we've gone into the culture of what is the opposition doing? What is APNU doing? What is the FC doing? Are our Guyanese really and truly ready to stand up to say to PPP, this is enough, we had enough?
Well, from our work on the ground, and I'm saying this, that I could recall when we were campaigning on other elections on the quarantine, and you go to certain houses, people would be in the hammocks, they would be in the verandas, and they would say that nobody's home. And in the run-up to 2011 elections, it was a different thing altogether. It was a culture change. And people would stay in the hammocks until you come in, open the gate and come in. And they never had favorable opinions of how the government is performing. And we were not surprised at the results in 2011. And we've been walking about all over, and more, everywhere. And there's definitely a new ethos that is pervading in Guyana. The government doesn't have this luck on the people that they think that they'll just wouldn't just go and support them inside out at every election. They're in trouble and they know it. They are in trouble. And we know because we are on the ground. We are on the ground all the time, all over the place. As I said, a team has gone in with the leader into the Rupununi. And they'll be there for a couple of days. So we are confident. We're very confident, and we're saying, let's bring on these elections. In fact, in all that has happened, any government would want to believe it would require a new mandate. And so we need elections to come on. And the international community, they have indicated that elections should come on also. And as I said to you, the government operates in the context of a global view, and they have to decide if they want to be the pariah in the international community.
Finally, before we go to the phone lines, take a break from our conversation and go to the phone lines. Is Donald Ramotar the worst president Guyana has ever seen?
Well, he certainly will go down in history as being the president that has dealt the severest blow to parliamentary democracy and to local democracy, because he's refusing to call local government elections also. You know, they talk all kinds of things about this constitution and they embrace it so much, and there's no other president that has ever dealt such a blow to the Parliament of Guyana. But let me say this too, you know, this thing shouldn't be looked at in isolation. What is the consequence of proroguing the Parliament? A major consequence is that you're preventing the people's representatives from providing oversight of government action. That's the main thing. And during this period here, they want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on projects and the like, and entering into new contracts. And those things would not have the scrutiny of the Parliament because it's suspended. And that's why we have signaled that we won't consider ourselves bound necessarily by any contracts that the government enter into during the period of prorogation. And that was also pinpointed by the British High Commissioner, because Parliament is to provide oversight and scrutiny, and they're saying they have projects for Guyana, and they couldn't consider these projects coming on stream because there's no scrutiny. There's no scrutiny. There's nobody to give oversight to what these projects and the monies that they would be putting into Guyana would be about. And that's one of the major things. And in fact, you know, we have this case in court where we're challenging the Minister of Finance in spending money that has been considered by the Parliament and disapproved. And lo and behold, at the last session, the Attorney General has confessed to the Chief Justice that they, in fact, have spent all of the money, the around $37 billion, that were disapproved by the Parliament. Remember, when we went to court, they had brought a statement of excess showing that they spent $4.5 billion of what was disapproved. So we went to court to stop the spending, and he's saying that they spent all in 2014. You could imagine that? And they talk about separation of powers. The separation of powers say the function of the Parliament is to approve or disapprove. Well, the Chief Justice said that inherent in approving is disapproving. That's in his judgment. And the 2 years where we reduce and cut, the Chief Justice's decision was that we couldn't reduce or cut. We could only disapprove or approve. So in 2014, we disapprove. And still they're spending. And trying to say that we are stopped from saying that they can't spend because in 2012 they spent when we cut, and 2013 they spent when we cut. But that is a fallacy, because the reason why we approved the statement of excesses in 2012 and 2013 was because we followed the Chief Justice's ruling that we couldn't cut or reduce the budget. But in 2014, when they came with it, we disapproved of it. And when it came with the statement of excess, we didn't vote for it. And that's because we were acting properly and in accordance with the decision of the Chief Justice that we could disapprove the money. That's why we didn't. And that's why they are unlawfully and illegally spending money. Now, this is election time. It is important that the government doesn't use the people's money to campaign. It's very important. And it is clear that by shutting down the Parliament and preventing oversight, that at the end of the day, we could find that a lot of money would have been spent that would not have been authorized to be spent. And we must remember, no money can be spent and withdrawn from the consolidated fund unless it has been authorized by the Parliament.
Some might argue, because we've had this discussion before where APNU MPs, and it's a fact that in previous elections, PPP governments has always used government funds, state funds, to fund their campaign. And in those cases, we didn't have a situation of a prorogued Parliament. So some may argue that what's really the difference now?
No, but we highlighted it. That was the problem. We highlighted the fact that they were attempting to spend state funds, and in certain instances, we actually had the evidence. For example, at NCN and those places where you couldn't find any record to show that the government paid for all the time that they utilized in campaigning on NCN, and so they know that. And because, don't forget that was when they had a majority in the Parliament, but from 2011 they had no majority. And they have been made to account by this new Parliament. They have been made to be transparent by this new Parliament. And they know that it's going to be, we're not going to approve of them using state resources to campaign. And look at the irony of this whole thing. The former President Jagdeo just came back from Sri Lanka, where he headed a team that was looking at the elections there, observing the elections. And what was his complaint? That the Sri Lankan government was using state resources to complain. Exactly what his brethren are doing here. So we know that they believe they could use this period of prorogation to pillage the government coffers. And that's why we are asking for conservatory order and for declarations. Now, until the declaration would have to be at the end of the hearing on the trial. But in the interim, it is important that the court makes an order that would preserve the status quo so that you couldn't have any more unauthorized spending by the time this case is heard. In other words, there's a real danger, as in the Kenyan case where they granted a conservatory order. There's a real danger that by the time the case is finished, the public coffers are empty.
I'm coming to that now, where you're saying, yes, the danger is by the time they're finished, the public coffers are empty. Now, at the end of this case, and let's say when the prorogue parliament, when that situation has been fixed, if it is discovered that during the period of prorogation, monies would have been spent, used
unauthorized,
right,
and in breach of the Constitution,
can there be new sanctions, additional sanctions?
Obviously. Don't forget what the prorogation has done is to protect the finance minister, because there was a motion before the Privileges Committee in relation to the Minister of Finance too, for spending where Parliament said he shouldn't spend. So a lot of people are being protected by the prorogation of this Parliament. You know? And at the end of the day, we have to protect the people's money. And as I said, in the Commonwealth jurisdiction of Kenya, there was a similar allegation, and the court was quite prepared to make a conservatory order so that wherever the public coffers is under threat, they said it should be granted, because the public, the people of Kenya, could suffer serious prejudice by the time the matter is completed. And there would be it would be difficult to recover the money that was spent. That is really the main thing. That if they were to spend unauthorizedly in this period, how do you recover the money? And so the court must have an interest in protecting the public coffers.
But you just asked the question indeed. So let me ask another one. Is there any way that the money can be recovered?
Well, that would depend on the system and who's in government. I think the APNU has assured this nation that anybody who's walking around with the people's money unlawfully in their pockets will have to feel the full force of the law. The law will take its course.
All right. I think this is an appropriate time for us to open the phone lines. Viewers, we're going to accommodate your questions today. Remember, we usually have 2 numbers, but you can only get through on one today. That is 225-0008. Please turn the volumes of your television sets down. Be respectful and be as brief as you possibly can. Of course, you know today's topic. And Mr. Williams will definitely accommodate any other questions regarding politics that you may have. Caller, welcome. Caller, are you there? Caller?
My message was on the general election.
Yes.
I'm proposing that all the votes come to Georgetown, all the votes at a certain time at the session, all box must be sealed, padlocked, and escorted by security whatsoever. I'd like my officer to Georgetown. I do not trust this polling station outside counting the votes them. Things can go wrong.
Okay.
That's my problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, caller. I'll try to take about 2 or 3 calls before Mr. Williams responds collectively. Caller, right there?
Hello?
Yes, you have to turn the volume of your television down.
Yes, a very good evening to you and your panel.
Good day.
Good day.
I was looking with disdain to know that the former president went to Sri Lanka, and look what he's administrated over. Look the results. Share teeth in, and he is proud to dare and made those recommendations when he's guilty of that. That is my contribution.
Okay, caller. Thank you. Caller, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, you're on the air.
My contribution is pertaining to the judicial system. We would go wrong in circle once the judicial system is not independent, politically independent or motivated. Because as Mr. Williams said, that the approve or not approve. When you're not approved, they still spending the money. So it's like what Shama said, the PPP is influence the judicial system. They appoint judges. So we're going wrong in circle.
Okay. Thank you, caller. MP Williams, I think it's appropriate for you to start on the comment about the judicial system.
Well, I mean, the caller has the impression, but the system of appointing judges is via the Judicial Service Commission, and that's why the members of the Judicial Service Commissions have to be also independent and insulated. And the judges have to be independent too. They have to have security of tenure. Their conditions of service must not depend on the government, so to speak. And that's why we have been saying that we needed a salaries and wages commission, as you have in Trinidad, you have in Kenya and other parts of the Commonwealth, an independent body to look at the question of the remuneration and the conditions of service for judges. Because if it is that the executive would be determining directly if they're going to benefit the judges with an increase in salary or not, or with increase in the conditions of service or not, then one would tend to think that that couldn't be auguring for a situation of independence. Also, we have to ensure that the judges are insulated, and we obviously have the judges with the right approach and everything. And that's what the Constitution has done. It sets up a Judicial Service Commission, it's put in some checks and balances. And so the question is, we don't have enough judges. And for example, you have the Chief Justice alone in the Constitutional Court. We believe we should have other judges in the Constitutional Court. Because what you find is everything goes to the Chief Justice. And he has in fact overruled himself on certain occasions. The first case that Bent, if you remember, that the government never recognized the authority of the new parliament. So whenever the parliament made a decision, the Attorney General ran to court and challenged it. Mm-hmm. The first time he did that was in where the National Assembly voted on the composition of its own parliamentary committees. They lost the vote and they ran to court. They lost it in court too. But in that, the allegation or contention was made that Mr. Granger was not a proper party, and the Chief Justice said yes, he was a proper party that could be sued. But then in the budget cuts case, when we were about to embark on cross-examining head of the Presidential Secretary, Dr. Luncheon, I was looking forward to that. The AG made some intervention, and the Chief Justice said yes, Mr. Granger is not a proper party, and he shook him out, if you recall that. Mm. So, not that the judge can't reverse himself, but, obviously, a judge, as they say, the old aphorism, justice must not be done, but it must be seen to be done. And I suppose that's why that caller would make such a contribution. The fact of the matter is we need to continue to insulate the judiciary. We need to check the excesses of the government. As I said to you, Article 218 of the Constitution says that Parliament could approve and disapprove of government's proposal in the estimates. The National Assembly and Parliament have done that. Yet, the executive suspends. So in other words, the executive has trampled on the rights of the legislature in carrying out its function. And what the AG is contending is that the same section says that you could spend money. The same section says that. In other words, he's trying to say the framers of the Constitution didn't know what they were doing. Because in Article, subparagraph 1, they say you could approve and disapprove. And then in subparagraph 3, they're saying when you disapprove, the executive could overlook that and spend still. So obviously it's an absurdity. But as I said, desperate people raise all kinds of desperate contentions. Now in terms of the elections, I think citizens must know this. Counting at the end of the day, after the election, is at the place of poll. That is the place. That is the most important place. That's why political parties are enjoined to have their polling agents there and the counting agents throughout the day. They have the polling agents throughout the day, and then at the time of counting, they must have the counting agent there. And the counting agent must be able to scrutinize the process of counting. At the end of the process, the counting agent has to sign off that he's satisfied. They have to sign the statement of polls that they agree with the computation at the end of the day. And when that is done, the ballot box, of course, is closed, seal off, and also each party would put their mark or their seal on the ballot box. But what is important at that polling station is that the presiding officer has to post up the results. You follow what I'm saying? So that's the most important thing. So once you scrutinize the process and you sign off on the count, even if the box goes down to some other destination, they will have to reconcile any differences with what people sign up, because it won't be only one political party sign up. All the political parties contesting elections would have representatives signing off on the statement of poll.
Okay.
So the important thing about the ballot box is that you should have your representatives there
Present.
at the beginning of the day, polling day, so that before polling starts, you could examine the ballot box to ensure that it's empty. You can't have your polling agents turning up at 6:30 when polling starts at 6 o'clock. Because when they turn up, the box seal off already and ballots would be in there. The only question is whether you know who put the ballots in or whether ballots were there before. So counting is at the place of poll. You would recall that was done in introduced into the law by Mr. Hoyt in 1992, and that is still the law.
Okay. Caller, welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And today it's concerning on the whole idea of this no confidence motion Mr. Ranjatan bring. He didn't recognize that the government had a next real this whole idea of prioritization. That's the thing that really have me whereby this and he was saying that you know that the government they would use it. They were spending money even when Parliament was going on. According to Mr. Basil Williams was saying just now that they were a privilege of that the finance minister was before, and because of this the prorogation come into play, and so they decided to use it as a way to so my thing is that if they were spending during when they were Parliament and they were oversight body, you could imagine what they are doing now when there is no oversight body. So that is my confusion. So I think we need to use a little more wisdom in what we're going to do, and not if there must be a law in place that when Parliament is prorogate, or they must never be spending nothing, or no work should be going on until it being resolved. And I think the prorogation is too long, 6 months. Bring it down to 2 weeks or something. Something has to be done in order to put things in balance. That's my question.
Thank you, caller. MP Williams, if I can piggyback on the caller for a bit, but is there anything an APNU government can do regarding this whole business of a prorogation period? Can that be changed in terms of the Constitution?
Well, it could be changed, but those provisions will require a certain majority to do that. In fact, that provision is a relic. Don't forget, there was a recent constitutional parliamentary amendment process, which resulted in certain amendments going into the Constitution. One was Article 13 or so, which showed a new approach in terms of democracy and people's participating in the governance process in Guyana and owning the process. Really and truly, that section should have been removed, that article should have been removed. Because it's incongruous. You know, it's not in consonance with the new ethos that the new amendments to the Constitution have engendered. And that's why I said to you, when reading it in isolation, It really ought to have been read subject to other articles. It's not the first time they did that. When they wanted to extend the life of a parliament, they read one article when, in fact, if they had read it with the other required article, and that matter went to the court, but it hadn't been determined, then they could not have been able to extend the life by another month. So that is the situation. You still have it on the books. It's only the court could resolve that matter at the end of the day.
All right. Caller, welcome.
Hi, happy New Year to you.
Thank you, caller.
The youth nowadays know.
Speak up for me a bit, please.
We, the youth nowadays, know that we don't have to go out in the streets and demonstrate. We're waiting for them at the poll. That's what we're waiting for them. Because we're conscious and knowledgeable that the people's money is the little children were born today, indebted to whoever country they borrow money from, and they ain't even earning nothing out of it. We still got to come out and find milk and sugar and rice for the children them. So we're waiting for them at the poll. That's what we're waiting. This is my contribution.
Thank you very much, caller.
Yes, but you just can't wait. You got to equip yourself to go and vote properly. In other words, you have to have your ID cards. You have to ensure your household who are of voting age also have the ID cards in the proper order, and you go out early to the poll at polling stations and vote.
Of course, and if I can just add to that, you have to also equip yourself mentally, because I can remember during the 2011 elections, of course, I don't have physical proof, but you saw instances where, when I say I don't have physical proof in terms of my own personal experience, but you saw instances where persons had to prove that they voted for the PPP. They collected, what it be, a few thousands or whatever, and they collected money to post on the social sites. Well, this is my ID card next to the ballot paper, and there's my X next to the PPP. So you have to also equip your mind so that they would not just use a few thousands to bribe and bait you. It's your money anyway. It's taxpayers' money. So
you have to be vigilant, because you couldn't get a picture of how you voted unless you took a camera inside there or your cell phone inside.
Which means there was a breach.
So people have to, that's the first thing, you have to protect your vote.
Yes.
And so we all have to be vigilant when the polling time comes.
Caller, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just want to ask a question. If the president do the same thing as he has done with the local government election, the national elections, what next going to happen there?
Thank you, caller.
What he means by do the same thing, do what?
Caller,
Not call
still
a
there?
date?
Not calling it.
Not call a date?
Yes.
Well, he has certain limitations. One of the limitations is that the question of spending, they have to have a budget. Each year you have to have a budget by April. You could spend for the first 3 months until a budget comes in, but you're limited to spending only 1/12 of what was budgeted the previous year. And that's why we are saying, if we disapprove of 37 billion, they can't spend any part of that 37 billion in 2015 because that was not approved or appropriated in the budget. And that's why it was fallacious for the AG to say that 2014 finished, and so he doesn't understand why the case is still there. But there is a lot wrong with that. For example, what is he saying? If you did something illegally in 2014, it becomes legal the next year. What is he saying? That the courts must sweep under the carpet something as important as illegal spending of the state's money, the people's money? I don't understand what the AG is saying. But we are saying to him, that 37 billion cannot be included when the 1/12 spending for each month for each agency is undertaken from January to March, because we never approved that. And that's one of the issues that will have to be determined. But they have to have a budget. If they don't have a budget, how could they continue spending? If they don't have a budget by April, how are they going to continue? There's no law for that. The only time they could spend is if they dissolve parliament and call elections. Because once you dissolve parliament, you have to call, the elections have to be held within 3 months.
But if I can help the call out a bit here, the prorogation period is 6 months. You said by April, if they don't have a budget, they can't. They should not be spending. But if they continue, because we have seen stranger things have happened under the PPP
Prorogation
government.
or no prorogation, they are required to have a budget by the April of each new year.
But we have no parliament for their.
It doesn't matter. They will have to call back the parliament. But if there's no parliament, how are they going to spend? That's why I'm saying there's a limitation on prorogation. They would need money.
Caller? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that call.
Right now, they have to be spending in relation to the last budget. And then when they have to spend at the beginning of this year for the first 3 months, it is in relation to the last budget. So if there's no budget by April, then they have problems.
But the PPP has blatantly disregarded the law before.
No, they haven't disregarded a law like that. They
No,
have
but
come
not
with
like
the
that
budgets. Have you
specifically.
noticed they've come with budgets every year for certain parliament?
I think the public is really and truly concerned that even though this is you have to call the parliament again, whether dissolve it or call back the parliament after 6 months, that they can
the
still
public,
do it.
we are educating the public on these matters. The public appreciate that it's a lawless government. It's all in the hands of the public.
Caller, are you there? Caller?
Hi, good afternoon, Malika.
Yes, you're on the air.
To you and Basil. From my contribution to this program is that Sharma had said on his program that the majority of persons could call back Parliament, let the Speaker do what he has to do, and they can actually vote and let the President be denounced President, and that means Sam Hines would come up and he will have to face the pressure. So now that we are going on within this country, because this country is not lawful anymore, it's not lawless, it's disgraceful, right? But I wanted to know what Basil could tell me concerning that part that Sharma had mentioned on his program, stating that both AFC and APNU can call back Parliament with the speakers doing his part, and the President would be fall back, and then the Sam Hines would come up for the President.
Thank you, caller. I think it's a perfect question to begin to wrap up on.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Sharma said that.
Yeah, see, I'm one of the persons who heard
But
it.
that's not on the cards. There's no provision for that in the Constitution. Because the article that deals with that situation requires a 2/3 majority.
Okay.
You can't have a 2/3 majority without the PPP being involved in the vote. Adam was supporting a 2/3 majority. So even if you say that you do the first part, that you have an issue, the only business would be that business that the President was in breach of the Constitution or did something or whatever. And that the Speaker calls the Parliament back, and that's the only issue you put to the Parliament. And the only way you could go past that is by having a 2/3 majority. So it wouldn't fly.
Okay.
We don't, the AFC and the APNU don't have a 2/3 majority in Parliament.
All right. Viewers, unfortunately, we have to go. We've come to the end of our program for today. But before I do that, MP Williams, I just want to give you an opportunity to bring the discussion back to where we began. What exactly is APNU calling for now, apart from having the international community involved in this discussion? What is APNU calling for?
We're calling, obviously, for a resumption of the Parliament and the naming of a date for national and regional elections.
Okay.
We're calling for a date to be set by the President for general and regional elections.
All right.
And to resume the Parliament. Because if he doesn't want to name the date, then resume the Parliament so the no confidence motion could come up for debate.
Okay. I guess for them it would be between a rock and a hard place. Viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. Of course, with me was APNU Member of Parliament, Deputy Speaker, Attorney at Law, and of course, Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Bassel Williams. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for your contribution. I'm Malika Ramsey. As always, be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Goodbye.